Hello and welcome back to the Across the Pod NFL podcast. I'm, as ever, your host, Andy Davis, and as you can see with me, I am joined by a returning guest. With me today is Sam Moores. Sam, how are you?
I'm great, mate. It's getting to the time of the year where we start talking about the NFL again, so it's great. I I mean the podcast. I won't spoil it, but the podcast we got today is a really fun one to do, and I was here for it last year. I really enjoyed it, and I'm back again, and we're gonna have some fun.
Yeah, and if you haven't seen from the title of this video, we are once again ranking all 32 starting quarterbacks in the NFL from 32 to 1. It's our third year of doing it, and once again, we will have sort of comparisons with last year and where these quarterbacks were placed, and all of that jazz, as well as some other facts I found out during my stat finding. As well, I was talking to quarterbacks. You've seen last week we had an episode where me and Ollie Kent. It'll be 2 weeks ago, as of this recording being posted, where me and Ollie Kent did rank quarterbacks by start, bench, cut. We have in the last half an hour before we record this episode today, I put it out on socials, giving you guys the chance to vote for who you would start out of the three, which we all picked out via Spin the Wheel, and we will let you know the results of it next week. Once again, before we carry on, huge thank you to the Zang Wills for the theme tune for this podcast today. So, yeah, we are going to rank our callbacks from 32 to 1. And I'm going to just quickly go straight into it. 32, same as last year. I'm going for Deshaun Watson once again at 32 for the same reason as last year, for the money he's getting. And if you listen back to the episode last year, I explained all that about how he was getting the most salary per touchdown. It was, for a guy that, drew all his draft picks in 2022, and for all the PR he brought with him, he hasn't really performed anywhere near like we thought he would, like the old Houston Texans days. And, this is the quarterback that, last year when I said it, it was a bit of a shock. But I think this year it's probably actually less of a shock, him being bottom of my list, because he's even worse in 2023. And I obviously injuries happened, but for me, he was awful. I think he's not been the same since, and I don't think right now he is at all warranting the money he's receiving, all the money guaranteed, and also the draft capital the Browns gave up for him. Sam, your thoughts on that?
You can't deny that if his trade to the Browns has been a massive disappointment in terms of his play. Obviously, getting hurt as well this year, and everything off the field as well. You can tell it's taken a toll, and not only him but also others around him, and it's just been a whirlwind, I can imagine. But on the field, the way he's played, it's not been good enough. I can't argue with you exactly, can I? I've not got him as my 32 because I've done my list a little bit differently. But he's not anywhere near the top. So
who is your number 32?
So my number 32 is Bo Nix. I think he's only one of only three rookies I think that will start right away, or even start at all this year. Because from the Broncos' point of view, I just don't understand playing Jarrett Stidham when Bo Nix's main strength is the fact that he's pretty pro ready to start with. So and also it's perfect for what Sean Payton wants to do. I don't understand why you then would sit him and play Jarrett Stidham in that situation. It just doesn't make any sense to me. I think he's so. I personally think that Bo Nix will start right away, and because I think he's the sort of lesser of the three quarterbacks I think will start, he is number 32 for me.
I get that completely. He is my number 31. I did have Nick/Wilson because I think I saw a report of Zach
exactly.
Wilson.
Zach Wilson could play as well, but I think Jarrett Stidham's a guy who's sort of the one right now.
And I think I saw talk of Zach Wilson be the best performing in OTA, and I think whoever the three are, I think you haven't bottom because I think whilst I don't particularly think anyone could succeed in the position they're in, but I just think even though he is pro ready, I do think that there's a reason why he was the last one taken of the first round quarterbacks. I think there is definitely concern to whether he is whether he can be pro ready, but it's whether he's going to be like great or just good or just average. Is he going to be a Kirk Cousins? Is he going to be is he going to be a Dak? Is he going to be a Josh Allen? We don't know. Or is he going to be Daniel Jones? But I think right now, I think he's the least talented of all the rookies, and I'm going to put him 31. And I might as well just rattle them off now because I have just gone for the rookies next up. So I've gone for JJ McCarthy of the Minnesota Vikings, 30th. Drake May of the Patriots, 29th, taking 3rd overall. Second overall pick, Jaden Daniels of the Commanders, 28th. And I got from Caleb Williams, who I almost put ahead of my next guy, but he's not played a single NFL down, so I can't put him anywhere but the top of the rookies, but behind all the pros, except for Deshaun Watson, of course.
There we are. Yeah, again, it's quite similar to what I've done. I've got Jaden Daniels as my number 31. Again, I think for him it's touch and go as to whether he will start. I think he will start, but especially if Marcus Mariota be in there, they may feel like they may just start Mariota straight away. But I personally think the way that Mariota has played recently, I think the Heisman Trophy winner will be better right away, so I think he will start. I'm fascinated to see what this Cliff Kingsbury offense looks like, if I'm being honest, because the Arizona one was so weird and it obviously didn't work. So he went away on a retreat before he went to USC, and then we'll be interested to see now he's back in the NFL what his offense will look like. And then I'm guessing there's going to be a gap between him and number 1 overall pick Caleb Williams, especially because I think Caleb Williams has a better situation, but I do think that Daniels will be pretty good. So 31 maybe might be a bit harsh, but I think just the way, obviously because he's a rookie and the way the league is, I think that's where I've got him. I mentioned Caleb Williams, I'll get onto him in a minute. At 30, I've got who I think your next guy is. I've got Bryce Young at 30. I think it's really hard to rank him because of the situation that he had last year. Yeah, it was probably the worst we've seen a rookie inherit at all, especially at offensive line, because he was just running around back there. There are a couple of games at the end of the year where we saw improvement, but overall it looked very bad for Young, which is why I've got another rookie, from last year, Will Levis ahead of him. Some will be surprised by that, but I see something in him, and I think the Titans do too. I think they made the right head coaching hire in Callahan. He's got a great set of weapons now as well. His Callahan's dad, Bill, has been brought over to fix the offensive line. He's one of the best in the business. And I'm just really excited to see the Titans team. And I think Levis has a solid second season. So I've got 2 guys and another one, which we'll get into in a minute, separating a couple of the rookies. But yeah, for me, I got Caleb ranked a little bit higher, but it's hard with him, obviously, because we've never seen him play in the NFL before.
Yeah, and I think you can look at the potential he brings. I think there's some quarterbacks that you could argue maybe be lower because there's one guy that I've got just above Bryce Young that has been in the league for years and hasn't really done it apart from one season. I think you could argue that maybe they should be lower than rookies because they've had their chance, they've not performed where the rookie could go out and ball, but at the same time you just don't know. I mean, everyone was waxing Liverpool about Zach Wilson. On his pro day, from his time at BYU, and now no one rates him at all. So I think it's very good. It's very easy to look good in college, and it's all down to the situation you're in. And there's a reason why these teams are picking these good quarterbacks high up is because they are bad teams all round. So I think you see a lot of rookies going to really, really difficult first years, and I think Williams is going to be the exception because I said it before in our last episode that how often do you see a first overall pick go to a 7-9 team who's just gone out and got DeAndre Swift, Keenan Allen, already has Cole Kmet, already has DJ Moore, and it's all down to that Panthers trade. And so Williams really, I've never seen, albeit my young 10 years watching the NFL, I've never seen a rookie quarterback go into such a good situation. Not even Peyton Manning had this good situation when he came into the NFL, when he was first overall pick. So for me, Williams, I think if you go 7-9 with Tyson Bagnet and whoever else was quarterback for the Bears last year, you can surely go 9, 10, even more wins with Williams. But of course, we just don't know. I'm backing Williams. I love his personality, and I think he's something different to NFL that we haven't really seen. He's not like a robotic quarterback. He's, who's been media trained down to a T. He's a guy that says what he feels, and he seems to care. Whether it's crying at USC when he lost the game, or just to how much he's taken in the Bears sort of franchise so far, how much he's got on board with it. I think he should, even if rookie he may struggle, I can still see him, having like, I don't know, 21 touchdowns, 13 interceptions, and just having an average season. But I think then you'll see in the next year and the following year just get more accustomed to this offense. And I think, Williams for me, I think almost it's the first time ever where you can actually not excuse a quarterback if they don't perform in their first year, because you haven't got that get-up calls of, it's a bad defense or it's a bad O-line or you haven't got the weapons. He's got all of that. So I'm very excited to see how he's playing. And of course, he's going to be playing in London this year, one of the 3 games. Of course, he'll be playing the Jacksonville Jaguars, who will also be playing the New England Patriots, as well as the Jets against the Vikings. Sam, are you going to any of the games this year?
Yes, I will be. Potentially all 3 as well, but certainly 2 of them. Both for the Spurs games. I'm just. I'll talk about it a bit more a bit later, but I think we've got some good storylines with the games this year. It may not be sort of the best teams, but I'm really excited to watch all of the games because there's there's certainly some storylines. Obviously, number 1 overall pick, you got Aaron Rodgers coming back. The Jags, as always, like with that team, they should be contending for the AFC South, but the AFC South is so loaded now that so there's just tons of storylines you can take from those games. I'm really looking forward to all 3 of them.
Yeah, I think it got a lot of stick, and I think it's getting unfair stick because, first of all, granted, Patriots Jags is an awful game. That is by far the worst of the 3. But you still got a rookie quarterback in Drake May. You still got this Jags team that have adopted London, and they're there twice a year now, and they've still got great weapons. And obviously, a quarterback has just been paid, a good quarterback. More on him, obviously, later on. You've got Aaron Rodgers, you said before, Justin Jefferson. You've got a rookie quarterback in JJ McCarthy, Breece Hall, Garrett Wilson, a great defense from the Jets. And you look at the other games, well, the Bears against Jags. You mentioned it, you've got Caleb Williams, Keenan Allen, John J. Swift, and then you got the Jags I mentioned before. So, there's a lot to be excited about. I've never seen a year everywhere there's been 3 rookie quarterbacks, probably all starting in the London series in 1 year. I think it's really interesting in that sense.
And this way as well, you'll get four teams as well of the 5 I'd expect to be in the playoff hunt. I think the Bears and the Vikings should be at least sort of around. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, they're one of the best coach teams in the league. Absolutely. I think the Bears and the Vikings should be around the playoffs, especially the talent the Vikings have, as I call back a bit differently. The Jets should be around the playoffs, and the Jags should be around the playoffs. There'll be 4 teams that'll be contending for wins in December, I think. So you certainly got get a taste of what each team will look like. Because I wouldn't be surprised to see all 4 in the playoffs. It might be a little bit out there, but I think there's certainly teams that will be all around there because of talent or coach stuff or something like that.
See, I'm not big on the Vikings this year. I obviously they've got Jefferson, they've got other players and good other weapons, but I just feel like it's a quarterback situation for me. We saw last year what happened even when Cousins was playing, they struggled, and when he went out, apart from the couple of weeks, the insanity run of Josh Dobbs, it was pretty bad quarterback play. I know they still got 6-7 wins last year. I just don't know whether, especially in a division which is so good now, you got the Lions who made the NFC title game. You've got Jordan Love who massively improved in the second half of the season with a great young receiving core there. You've got the Bears we mentioned just said before as well. So I think it's AFC North has always been my favourite division just for the stadiums. But that's going to be a really tough division to get out of, and some tough places to go on the road. And I just feel like Vikings in 2 years, absolutely. Jefferson will still be there in his prime. You'll give JJ McCarthy 2 years of learning. I just don't know whether this year will be their year. But I do still love Brian Flores, and if he's still there, then defense, anything can happen. But yeah, I just feel like their division more than anything else might come back to haunt them.
No, I think. I mean, we'll get onto it when who I think will start for the Vikings in a bit. But I just think they're really well coached. I think Kevin O'Connor is a great coach. Brian Flores is one of the best defensive minds in the league. Together, the talent's got a lot better for the Vikings over free agency as well. And if you can just get some decent quarterback play, I I honestly think any of the four teams could win the NFC North. I think it's probably one of the most open divisions in football.
Yeah, I think you can make cases. For me, certainly three of the four teams. When you look at previous years, it was the AFC East last year. It was the NFC West in years gone by. The AFC West a couple of years ago, and there's always that one division where people go, legitimately all four teams could win this division. And I think this year, the AFC North, maybe even the NFC North, so the AFC and the NFC North, I think both those divisions are going to be ones where you could see all four teams going out and doing that. So you had Will Levis 29th. 28, who is this going to be?
So my 28 is Anthony Richardson. And I feel I initially had him quite higher than this, but then I realised we've not really seen much of him yet. So I put him back down the list. But despite the small sample size, to me, he is the second best QB from last year's class. Obviously, CJ Stroud being number one. I really, really like what I saw from him in Shane Steichen's offense before he was shut down for the year. Mechanically, he looked way better than I thought he would do in year one. It's like we thought he'd have like a 50% completion percentage. We think, because he just looked so raw in college. But similar to what Steichen did with Jalen Hurts, he actually looked quite good in those few games of the Colts, and that has given me a lot of confidence. Obviously, his rushing ability as well is brilliant. Only Josh Allen and Cam Newton you can really compare to him in that aspect. I think Anthony Richardson is going to be quite good. I was very impressed from what I saw last year, and it's why, for me, he is the second best QB of the class. So I've got, Nixon Daniels, then Bryce Young, Will Levis, and then Anthony Richardson at 28.
Yeah, I mean, I will talk about him more there on Richardson. I've got him a bit higher than you, so I will talk about him later on. But moving on to 27, of course, I had Caleb Williams.
So do I.
Who's 27
so,
for you?
So
same one?
well.
Okay, brilliant. Yeah. So, moving on to 26th, guy you've already mentioned is Bryce Young. I think it's a guy that I think easily could see big improvements next year, especially with Dave Canales there, and how he did with Baker Mayfield. As the coordinator for the Buccaneers, I think that could be a big difference. But I think there's still a lot of work to do there. I think even with Canales, I think it's still a really depleted squad, and I think he's one that it'll take him. I think if he's going to be a good player in the NFL, they're going to need to give him time. They can't, do what it's Justin Fields in Pittsburgh and get rid of him after. Obviously, unless someone comes available, like like someone like Joe Burrow, for some reason requests a trade, and obviously you go for it then, or Josh Allen, anything like that. But I think as long as there's a lot of quarterbacks around him that I think you may as well stick with Young over them, because he's young. He's had 1 year. He's learned a lot. He'd have learned a lot from this year, you'd think. But right now, I can't put him anything higher than 26, because what I have seen has been pretty bad. But I do feel sorry for him at the same time, because I bet he wishes he could have the Bears this year's Caleb Williams situation. I bet he wishes he could have that last year, especially considering how the trade went down and how Williams ended up going to the Bears. For me, he must look on that with a bit of you think of that SpongeBob meme with Squidward with looking out the window with SpongeBob and Patrick. It feels like that with sort of Bryson looking over at CJ Stroud, how he did last year, and looking at Williams getting an amazing situation, which not many rookie quarterbacks get. So for me, Bryce Young is 26.
Yeah, it's not too dissimilar from how everyone viewed Tua with after Burrow and Herbert just jumped out the gate and were amazing. I think it's sort of similar to that. Again, I actually really like Bryce Young. He was my I liked both him and Stroud last year, but he was my number one guy. I just like that kind of quarterback, but you have to give him an offensive line, especially smaller quarterback. There's a couple guys that are near the top for me that are smaller quarterbacks. You have to give them an offensive line, because otherwise they can't see, and we saw that a lot with Bryce last year, and that just really didn't help at all. I really like him, but no, you have to give him an offensive line and weapons, and hopefully next year he gets a little bit better. They spent a lot of money on the offensive line, but I have hope. I think he can succeed, and he's a pretty similar quarterback to Baker Mayfield, who obviously Canales has a success with as well. So I'm quite confident that he'll look a lot better next year. How much better we don't know, but he'll certainly look better next year. For me, my number 26 is Gardner Minshew. I think he starts at QB for the Raiders this year. I think it's what I would do anyway. I'm not sure he does. I think him and Aiden O'Connell are about the same ability, but this is the start of a few sort of backups that I think have got more experience in the NFL, which is why they're ahead of rookies, and sort of the first year guys for me. But I just feel like it's similar to like the Ryan Fitzpatrick of a lot of teams. I just feel like he gives you a much better chance to win. I think the team would sort of move to him more, want to play for him more. A great leader in the locker room. You'll get some highs, you'll get some lows. But I think Gardner Minshew actually fits where this Raiders team are at right now. So I'd start him. I don't know if he actually will or not, but I'd start him, and he's the first of a couple sort of career backups that I think will start for teams at the start of next season anyway.
Yeah, you look at Gardner Minshew, and this guy just looks like he's meant to play for the Raiders. For me personally, I think there's something like the silver and black that just I think the whole Raider is sort of that kind of attitude. I think Christian Wilkins falls into that as well. I just think that Minshew, friend of the show, Shane Harris always likes to talk about how Roquan Smith looked born to play for the Ravens. I feel like Gardner Minshew was born to play for the to the Raiders, especially the Vegas Raiders. The Vegas lifestyle, and how he's one of the most popular quarterbacks in the league, and he's a real character. And I think he would suit the Vegas lifestyle and this sort of Raiders team. And I think that
and Antonio Pierce as well. I think it just fits. Like it's what for where the Raiders are at. I think it just fits.
Yeah, I remember Jason Bell talked about on friend of the show Nat Coombs' podcast, and Nat Coombs show, where he talked about how he did a quick fire quiz with Jason Bell, and he asked him which former teammate would you have sort of defending you in a bar fight. Straight away, Jason Bell goes Antonio Pierce. So I think that and if you ask the question which NFL quarterback would you want to sort of defend you in a bar fight, I think Will Levis maybe, but I think Gardner Minshew is the guy you'd want because he's just such a cool guy, and I think that he showed me at times last year with the Colts that he can be a good quarterback. And exactly what you say is completely right. I think he has those moments where, like Fitzpatrick, he basically is Fitzpatrick 2.0, from the personality to the dip and dunk, sort of the highs and lows sort of in one game that a quarterback can have. I think that they're pretty much just the same person. Maybe his spirit's been moved into Minshew, but for me, Minshew, he impressed me at the Colts. Obviously, he wasn't to be in the playoffs. Sorry, not making the playoffs, I should say. The playoffs.
No, they lost final day.
That's it. The Texans, right? No, who did they lose to? There was a winning in game, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, they're the game. Basically, it could have been any of the Texans, the Colts, and the Jags on the final day.
That's right. Yeah, and I think the Colts played the Texans, didn't they? And the Texans won. And the friend of the show, Graham Henderson, went to the game, and I'm trying to think whether that was wild card or whether that was final day. But that's cleared things up. Gardner Minshew. I really want him to do well. But I think he's got more of a chance of doing well than my next guy, Daniel Jones, 25 for me. He's had so many chances. He's had so many times as a quarterback, and I think that the Giants' decision to pay him that money looks really bad, especially with what happened with Saquon since him now going to the Eagles. For me, he doesn't inspire me at all. He has the legs, which is the one thing he has going for him. And I think he could, he's definitely probably one of the best scrambling quarterbacks in the NFL. But I think if you look at his arm, it's just not there. And I think you talk about Bryce Young only having 1 year, having a bad first year, bad situation. You look at these rookies that haven't played a single down yet. But Daniel Jones was drafted 2019, 6th overall, had 5 years at the starter, only really one good year. I've seen enough now. He's not going to be the guy moving forward. And I think that I can see him either being traded, or they could even just release him, or they could just let him go down his contract and then let him leave as a backup. It's not going to be the guy. And I think that the Giants, it wouldn't surprise me if, maybe Arch Manning is a guy in a few years, or they try and maybe they get one of the top quarterbacks in the next year or two, because I just don't think that he at all is a guy you'd want on your team.
No, I kind of agree with you. He's not yet for me, but I'll get into it in a minute. But I completely agree. Carrying on with my theme of the backup guys, for me, number 25, Jacoby Brissett. I think it'll be him who starts New England. This New England roster is the worst roster in the NFL, certainly weapon wise, and it doesn't have the depth in the trenches, especially on the offensive line, that it once had. Either, I think it's a massive risk playing Drake May, because they may find themselves with a very high pick in the draft next year after he's not looked great because their situation sucks, and they're still unsure in the quarterback position, and it'll be like Josh Rosen and Kyler Murray again. And I think it's just not very helpful at all. So I personally would just, he's one of the most raw quarterbacks there is of the rookies. I personally would just start Jacoby Brissett and see where we go from there, because I think it's a risk, because we've seen it before with that New England team. I don't, and new coach staff and everything. I think Brissett's the guy to sort of he's just a bridge quarterback, and I think it just works.
Well, the Patriots will know themselves just how important it is to let a quarterback sit. Tom Brady did it, but obviously different situation, because Tom Brady was sixth round pick, and Bledsoe was the first overall pick. They paid all that money. They weren't expecting this to happen. But you look at, we mentioned before, Williams having all the help. I mean, looking at the Patriots depth chart, I mean, you've got Ramondre Stevenson as running back. He didn't exactly light the world alive in his last season. You've got Kendrick Bourne. I do like Bourne and Demario Douglas. They got Jalen Polk and Hunter Henry, but that is not. It's probably say it's a good, but not a great.
The offensive line is not good either. It's not what it once was, and that.
Oh God, no! I mean, you've got Orafor, Strange, Andrews, So, and Onwenu, and it's a poor line. And you look at Drake May. I mean, you look at Williams being a situation. I think the Denver one isn't as bad as people make out. After the Vikings one's pretty good. You got Hawkinson and Jefferson, but for me, it's like that is such a poor group, and I think that even if it means benching him for a year and getting 5-6 wins, you can get another elite receiver in the following draft or good lineman, and I think that's how they'll move. I don't think starting in week one is necessarily the best thing, because you look at the Broncos of Bo Nix, that you've got Cortland Sutton, you've got everyone else on that team, and you look at obviously McCarthy with Jefferson and Hawkinson. I just don't think that he is going to have any chance of succeeding if he fails year one and is put in straight away. So I think, I still think he'll be there probably towards the end of the year, maybe, or maybe not at all. But I still, maybe could have put Brissett in my 32, but I just feel like May is the guy. He's going to be the guy moving forward. So he will be there at some point. Now moving on to 24, a guy that, has gone down 5 places from last year for me. It's Derek Carr of the Saints.
Wow.
The first shocker, apparently.
He's gone down for me, but he's not at 24.
See, I think he really underwhelmed me. I wouldn't be shocked if he's there, behind Rattler at the end of the year. I think that I was a big supporter of him at the Raiders, and I think that when you had that resurgence year in 2021 when he made the playoffs, all for his new contract, but he did not impress me at all with the Saints at all. And yeah, I don't see him improving. He's at that age now. The only way for me is down, and down my list he goes.
Awesome. My 24 is Sam Darnold. I think he starts at the Vikings. I think it just makes so much sense. Whilst Kevin O'Connell, again, one of the best offensive minds, especially if quarterbacks, gets his hand on a very, very, very raw JJ McCarthy, who he hardly threw the football in college at all. He comes into a team that, the Vikings, the roster outside the quarterback position has playoff aspirations. I think if you just get some decent quarterback play from Sam Darnold, who I think he's had a hard time of it. Very, very unlucky with the Jets. The situation was horrific, and obviously being in that market, last couple of places he's been, obviously he's learned from Kyle Shanahan, and I feel like he's probably been moulded into a better quarterback. He now goes into another great offensive mind in Kevin O'Connell. I just feel like if there's something there, like a lot of people thought was there with Sam Donald, I think you might be able to get it out of him in a good situation where he can start with one of the best receivers in the league, probably the best receiver in Justin Jefferson, decent enough offensive line. It's one of the best places for a quarterback to develop. If they can get something good out of Darnold, then move him on, maybe give him one final chance somewhere else to start, and then towards the end of the year, or even maybe sit McCarthy for a whole year if you do make the playoffs. I think it's a good situation to have there. Two guys that O'Connell can really mould, because I don't really think he got to do it with Kirk Cousins because he's Kirk Cousins.
Yeah, I mean, Darnold, for me, I think if Brock Purdy had gone down last season like he did again in the year before that against the Eagles, I do think Darnold, with that group of players around him, I think he could have done something.
Well, there was talk he could have started this time in training camp. There was talk he could have started. So we're going into, when we did this last year, that there was a chance that Sam Darnold could have played. So I think the Niners viewed him very, very highly. So if Kyle Shanahan sees something, if Kevin O'Connell sees something, then surely at that point you probably will say, he was drafted high for a reason. We'll see. I think he is going to get an opportunity to start early for the Vikings because of how raw McCarthy is. We'll see. And like similar to Baker Mayfield last year, this is your last chance. Go earn yourself a starting job.
Yeah, I mean, I've never been the biggest fan. I never was a fan of him really when he was drafted. I didn't really rate him at college, albeit don't watch enough college football to really have a real opinion on that. But from what I saw, on tape, I didn't really see the hype that everyone else had. And it seemed mad that he was at one point very close to becoming the first quarterback from that draft class to win a Super Bowl. And he got Josh Allen, he got Lamar Jackson in it, albeit Josh Rosen as well. But that was Baker Mayfield as well, for that matter. It seemed crazy that he was the first one to actually make a Super Bowl, and then also he was almost the first quarterback to win a ring, albeit as a backup. That would have been quite ironic, let's say. But I think he is on his last chance. I mean, if you can't make it work with Justin Jefferson and Hockenson and everyone else who's got on that team, when can he perform? So, yeah, interesting if he starts. The whole talk about McCarthy is that he's a winner, but at the same time, when you hand the ball off,
every play,
almost every other play, it's not a good reflection on the kind of quarterback he is. System quarterback might be the term that gets thrown around him when it comes to his NFL career. 23 is a guy that also has gone down by 5 and 1 as well, gone down 6. Geno Smith of the Seattle Seahawks. I think he took a massive downward turn in 2023. Obviously had a great of the 2022, got a comeback player of the year. We all thought he'd go on and do the same and do, if not better. But I think it was almost more stagnant. It was more... it took a slight downward turn, and I just think that maybe he could be seen as a one-season wonder. You think of Robert Griffin III and Nick Foles or people like that. I think he could be the next guy in that list, because I just think that really he's never been a bad quarterback. I just don't think that it's sort of that thing where they're not going to be bad enough for the Seahawks to draft a good quarterback. They're not going to be good enough to win Super Bowls. I just think he is probably, as Ollie said last week, the definition of mid, which I hate using because that's a horrible term. But I think he's just, for me, he is really average, and I think again he's a better version of Minshew. He can win you games, he can lose your games, but I back him a lot more than the likes of Minshew and everyone else in my list. Although, having said that, he is 22nd in my list, Gardner Minshew. I mentioned I had him higher up than you. I think these two are pretty much the same quarterback. I think one's the AFC and one's the NFC version. I got another version of that later on in my list, a lot higher, with two quarterbacks that I feel are very similar. If you listen to last episode, you know who that's going to be. So for me, both these quarterbacks are distinctly average, but they can, in the heat of the moment, they can win you a game with some Fitz magic, I was going to say, but just some magic.
Minshew mania, mate.
Yeah, Minshew mania, and Geno's. I don't know.
Yeah.
We'll have to find for those listeners or viewers on YouTube, do try and find us a nickname for Geno Smith. If you've got Minshew Mania and Fitzpatrick, let us know what we can use for Geno Smith. I'd like to use that throughout the season if he balls out on Cooks. But of course, they did get Sam Howell via trade the Commanders, who did actually, in moments, he looked good. And considering the whole drama around the Commanders last year, and really, apart from McLaurin, a real lack of weapons, I think maybe he has been brought in. Maybe, especially with Pete Carroll sort of behind the scenes, maybe Pete Carroll's brought him in. Especially with a new head coach, a young head coach in Mike McDonald. Maybe he's brought Howell with the idea of Smith may struggle this year and get Sam Howell in. Week 12, see how he does, because he showed me potential, and I think he could, on a well-run organisation like the Seahawks, one of the best-run organisations in the league, from front office to on the field. I think you give him DK Metcalf, you give him Charles Cross as his left tackle, you give him maybe not Lockett, maybe he'll be gone in a few years, but you give him Smith and Jigba. It's a good team there, and it's a well-run organisation. So I think somehow would probably do a lot better there than the dysfunction, or maybe what was dysfunction of the Commanders.
See, I quite like Geno Smith. He's not. I mean, I've got him in this tier. Basically, there's three players I think are very similar. There's a small tier of. I'll just name all three of them. Small tier of QBs who I think are on borrowed time as their team starter, as you said, of Geno Smith. He is one of these three. I feel like Daniel Jones at 23, Derek Carr at 22, and Geno Smith at 21. I quite like them. I think they're decent, but they're just decent. There's nothing special about them, and especially with Carr and Geno Smith, obviously they're getting up there in age as well. I'll start with Daniel Jones because you mentioned him earlier. Yeah, I think he needs a strong season, otherwise he's gone. I think the Giants will look elsewhere. It's already been very widely reported that they were pursuing JJ McCarthy in this draft process, so they're definitely looking for another quarterback. We can't deny that. Obviously, Jones was injured a lot of last year. I had him quite high last year. He's come down a few spots, but he was outplayed by both Tyrod Taylor and Tommy DeVito. He has to step up. Yeah, again, you mentioned it there. His rushing ability, probably the only reason why he's still in the job, I think, personally. I don't think he's that good of a thrower of the football. And here's a good stat for you as well. The last 3 seasons, he's had 26 starts. He's just had 19 big time throws, which is like a really a statistic a PFF used to measure how how sort of clutch a quarterback's throw was, or something that's in a moment on point. And so he had 19 in his last 3 seasons. In his first 2 seasons, he started 27 games, so just one more game, and he had 44. So
wow.
So Brian Daboll has got him. He's made him more conservative. They've won games, obviously, with Daniel Jones, but they've made him so conservative that his productivity on the field, down the field, and everything has halved. And for me, he's just, if you're putting up those numbers, you're also I don't think you're that great. So I actually think that he's on borrowed time. I like him, but he is just the definition of mid. As is Derek Carr. Again, I really like Derek Carr. I had him a lot higher last year, but his first season in New Orleans just didn't go as I expected it to. The Saints' offense was just so average the entire year. It hardly scored any points, and it was just so clearly a step down from what we had with Sean Payton. Derek Carr was also more conservative than usual last year as well, which led to his worst big-time throws percentage again, like with Daniel Jones, since 2017. He was down a lot, and he was more dink and dunk last year. But compared to we've seen him be good in 2016, 2020 when he led the Raiders to playoffs both times, or just missed out in 2016 but a winning record. He was really good those 2 years, like Pro Bowl nomination, everything, and he could push the ball downfield. The last couple of years, Derek Carr has not been the same guy, and that's why I think he's on borrowed time. So I really like him, but I just don't think he's the same guy anymore. And at 21, a guy you mentioned, Geno Smith. I think he was solid last year, but he wasn't as good as he was the year before. It wasn't quite the level of the year before, but it was still around top half to mid-table of the league good. Like, his numbers are really good, and he does put the ball downfield. He's not a conservative quarterback. He also doesn't really turn the ball over either. So I think Geno probably has a bit of a bad rap. The second half of the year, he actually put the team on his back when losing, and he was playing really well when Seattle went on the losing run towards the end of the year. That wasn't Geno Smith's fault. He had to play really well. The team just crumbled. He hardly turned the ball over. He, again, pushed the ball downfield, made some great plays. And I think he's actually played a lot better than a lot of the guys I've got coming up recently. But they have all either previously been elite, like some names that, or they're people who have something going for them, that they've got something extra. Gino has nothing extra. He's just an average mid quarterback who hasn't won in the playoffs. I think he's limited, and I think Seattle will be looking for a better option in the near future. But the last 2 years, I think he has played pretty well. Better than we expected nothing beforehand.
Yeah, I mean, no one expected him to do what he did in that first season starting the Seahawks. He was brought in obviously as originally as a backup, and obviously went out and got the starting job, and really that was it for him. And there was talk whether it's going to be him and Drew Lock. Obviously, he blew Drew Lock out of the water. But yeah, I don't think it's gone that much better for him in 2023. Moving on to my number 20, I've gone for a guy you've mentioned already, Will Levis of the Titans. I liked what I saw. I really did. Not only did he excel at times on the field, especially that one game where they were wearing the Oilers throwbacks. That was I think 4 touchdowns in that game. And I think whilst I think again he is going to be again in that same category, I think he's going to be in that Derek Carr and Geno Smith where he's going to be great, good, but not a guy that elite. I think you'll win sort of not because of him, but with him. And he also excelled. He did call the flop in that poker video I saw, which was incredible. But I think he's a guy you really want to root for. We mentioned it before on our QB start bench trade, but he's a guy you really want to do well. And I think he, as Ollie mentioned, a lot of adversity. Going from being now on the first day in Kansas City train station, not getting picked on draft night, and then having to wait till the second day, having to go back home. I think I'll probably give him a chip on the shoulder he'll need to be a quarterback, and a lot of quarterbacks have. You think of Brady Mahomes, definitely have a chip on their shoulder after being missed by some teams, and Josh Rosen, but his career didn't quite perform out like he said it would. Maybe not the mistakes that his 10 teams you thought were having. But yeah, for me, it is Levis. For me, he will never be a top 10 quarterback, but will never be a bottom 5 quarterback in my opinion. I think 20th is perfect. It's the halfway line. We're almost at the halfway point of the video now, and he's there. I think that's kind of fitting, if I'm honest. But Sam, who is your 20?
Going back to Levis as well. Again, you can tell where the Titans like him by one. They've got him an offensive coach, one of the sort of most talked about offensive minds. They've got the best offensive line coach in the league, as I was saying, and they've surrounded him as well. That sort of shows how Titans feel about him, because they feel like the AFC South is up for grabs. I really wouldn't be surprised to see him back in the playoffs straight away. Because I think that Levis is they feel good about him, and I think he's got so much upside. If you could just pour some of that into a team with weapons, again, better offensive line, I really do feel like the Titans will surprise next season. Anyway, my number 20.
Sorry to interrupt. I mean, you got Calvin Ridley, you've got Hopkins Boyd, you've got Tony Pollard to hand the ball off to TJ Spears, who I think could be a real star, but Derrick Henry not there anymore. I think this team will still miss the playoffs, but I think they definitely have potential to surprise people. Absolutely,
especially if Callahan does do work with that offensive line as well, because he's transformed every offensive line he's been at pretty much. Like, the Titans' offensive line, part of the reason why they struggled last year was because the offensive line was horrific, and the year before it was even worse. If you can even get a decent play out of that unit, open up rushing lanes to Tyjae Spears, and allow Will Levis time to throw the ball, maybe even time to sort of move and process a bit better as well. I think they really can surprise. Okay, my number 20. It's a guy you've had in your list before. First of 2 quarterbacks that were formerly elite that are on a very hot seat. It's Deshaun Watson. I thought he looked better last year, but again, he's still nowhere near who he was before his break for off-field reasons, as we keep mentioning. And he got hurt again as well. So yeah, he clearly wasn't as great as a runner either. And again, he was nowhere near as accurate as he was before as well. That was one of his main strengths. So he's nowhere near the player he used to be, but he showed glimpses at some point, which is why I've got him at 20. And maybe I feel like, I think he's properly on the hot seat now. He's half the player he was when he was the third highest credit quarterback in 2020, behind only Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers, who was MVP that year.
I mean, yeah, that season was in a year where, you think about how we see players, they lose that, they gain their weapon and they go on to another level. You think of Josh Allen with Dig. You think of Tua with Tyreek Hill. And I think you look at what will happen even more so is Stroud with Stephon Diggs. But the fact that Watson lost Hopkins, who was at the time maybe was the best receiver in the league, if not top 3, and then to still have the most passing yards, and then they only won 4 games, granted, but he had such an amazing year, and obviously we all know that fans, it's a shame for the way the fans didn't get to see that, and we all saw him, in London in 2019, one of the best performance I've seen from any NFL player at games I've been to live, and the decline is there to see, and I think that it obviously is down to his own fault.
Yeah, because it is his own fault, but it's such a big drop, isn't it? Like
it's huge. I mean, I said before that he's my favourite quarterback to watch before this all came out. I loved that. I sort of did root for the Texans. They had JJ Watt, they had Hopkins, they had Watson. I loved watching him play, and and how it's all gone since. It's a awful situation and such a shame. But yeah, it is that year break or year and a half break has really, obviously, that's done the damage, really, and obviously it is down to his own fault. So you can't really feel too sorry for him. But it is one of the biggest declines I've seen from anyone, really. Probably, maybe as far back as RG3 in terms of how good he was one year to then being bad the next. I don't think I could. There's probably one I've probably forgotten about, but that for me is the one I can think off the top of my head. Where it's like the downfall was there to see. But the opposite of that has come through my number 19 pick, a guy that was doubted, came to his team last year on a 1-year contract, only $4 million, I believe it was. It's Baker Mayfield, a guy that I mentioned I root for Will Levis. I really root Baker. Everyone who's been on this podcast before or listened to it knows I'm a big Baker Mayfield fan. I love his.
So am I as well.
Yeah, he's just someone you really want to root for, and I think that he really showed me what he can do again, showed the NFL world what he can do again. Now, again, I don't think he was elite, so I think 19th is perfect because there were games where he was, he did struggle, but you think of that Lions game and obviously beating the Eagles first of all, and then going out and really almost beating the Lions in that divisional round. And I think it's a rare game while watching it with my parents, both my parents. I'm normally watching games my own, but it's one game where I was watching it with both my parents. Not just because he looks like my friend, but also just because there's nothing else on, so he watched it with me, and we were really rooting behind Baker Mayfield, and I think he almost did it, but it wasn't enough. But Baker Mayfield, for me, I think that he obviously got his new deal. He deserves it. I do worry maybe being overpaid slightly, but the way the market is, probably isn't overpaying these days.
No, that's a good deal. That's a really good deal compared to a lot of other quarterback contracts.
Yeah, I mean, that's what Lawrence is getting, and he took a nosedive in 2023. Not maybe a nosedive, but definitely a downward turn.
Yeah.
So I think if he's getting almost double what Mayfield's getting, I think maybe it is a good deal. Mayfield, for me, loved what he did in 2023. Sam, 19 for you.
My number 19 is Russ Wilson. Similarly to Deshaun Watson, again, I think this may be his last starting job, and it may not even last a year because Justin Fields is in that building too, and I really like Justin Fields as a quarterback too, but Russell Wilson has been named the starter. He's going to start. And I actually think it's a great shame that we sort of got to this point with Russell Wilson, because in Seattle, like you were saying with Baker Mayfield, he was one of my favourite players to watch. I really enjoyed watching Russell Wilson back in the day. Last year he was decent. I think the way the Broncos handled him was a complete joke, to be honest, because he was, the offense was not eyesore. Yes, it was very conservative, but Russ did what he was asked to do. Hardly turned the ball over. Efficient offense, and maybe the reason why I did that is because Sean Payton saw that he's lost his mobility a little bit, and he doesn't have the arm that was one of the best in the NFL. It used to be. It's not quite that anymore. So maybe Sean Payton was just sort of covering up the cracks with the offense that again was efficient but just so boring and dull and dink and dunk. It was the first time his average depth of target had been below 9 yards, and it was a big drop from sort of 9-10 Russ had been averaging in every other year he played in the NFL. A big drop to 7.8 yards. It was just a whole yard and a bit more. It's one of the lowest numbers in the league last season. So he just wasn't pushing the ball downfield, and again maybe it could be because the arm's gone. But I'm hoping he can have some success in Pittsburgh. I really like watching him. I thought he was okay last year, better than he was the year before. But again, they just changed so much to make it work, made it so conservative that I worry that maybe we are seeing the end of Russell Wilson, and I do wonder how long it will take for Justin Fields to play in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I think obviously Fields is going to be there. He's a future there, unless someone else comes available. So I think, but for this year, I think he will start. I think the fact that Fields taking running back drills is a little bit concerning to me about whether he will be the guy going forward. But yeah, you can't deny the drop off he's had. I did think he improved at times last year towards the end, especially. And I was surprised to let him go, to be honest with you. But maybe with how it's gone since, maybe that is why. I do still believe they were going to go for JJ McCarthy. I don't think anyone expected, or maybe even Penix. But I don't think anyone expected that Penix move to go down at 8. I think that completely ruined their plans. I think they would have gone for whoever was next out of Penix and McCarthy. I think that's where they would have gone over Nix personally. So I do think that's probably foiled their plans. But I think for now, going to Pittsburgh where he's going. I mentioned before with who was it before with I forgot who it is now. But if he goes to more functional organisation like Pittsburgh, if they can win 7-8 games, make the playoffs.
Well, they're going to win 7-8 games to the Steelers. They always do. They do with Mason Rudolph and Duck Hodges at quarterback. They're going to do it with Russell Wilson at quarterback. It's just how much more he can elevate. And I think that's it. Like Russell Wilson, the old Russell Wilson will win a Super Bowl with this Steelers team and this coaching staff. Absolutely, because he used to elevate so much. All they're asking for is a little tiny bit, which is why I'm really excited for the Steelers next year. If they can just get a tiny bit of the old Russell Wilson, just a tiny bit, they're going to have some success. They may even win the division because they're always there because of how good the organisation is, as you were saying.
Yeah, just imagine what he was like if they had, when there was the trio of Roethlisberger, Brown and Bell, if maybe they had Wilson then, because Roethlisberger was slightly declining at that point, I think they would have probably gone on and won a Super Bowl with that team. But one thing, we talked about it in our episode, which is coming out as of tomorrow when we're recording it, but last week for you guys to listen to this podcast, where we did about building the perfect quarterback. Talking about Wilson's schedule that he has got the final stretch. So this may really impact his both Tomlin's win-loss his record of never having a losing season, but also whether Wilson's there playing in Week 18. But she's got the Falcons, Broncos, Chargers, Colts, Cowboys, Raiders, both New York teams before his Week 9 bye week. But after that, he's got Commanders on the road, then Ravens, Browns, Bengals, Browns, Eagles, Ravens, Chiefs, and then Bengals. That is, I've not seen personally a harder final 9 games of the season than that in years. I don't think that is an incredibly hard schedule, and I think that I know the Steelers do often get better second half of the season, but that is just an awfully tough schedule, which could well have an impact on Russell Wilson's performance this season.
Yeah, I was on mute. I didn't realize that. I said it was playoff team central. So it'd be interesting. But again, the Steelers they win those games with average quarterbacks. So I wouldn't be surprised. We'll see. But with that organisation and with a better quarterback, you'd like to think they'll be in and around 9-10 wins again. They have to be. My number 18 is someone you've already mentioned, is Baker Mayfield. He goes up 5 spots after an impressive season where he took the Bucs obviously to the divisional round. Again, I've always stood by this, and I was right last year. Give Baker a half decent offensive line, and he'll be a very good quarterback. Like I was saying with Bryce Young earlier, I just feel like those kind of quarterbacks need an offensive line. That he had it to some degree last year, and it was really good. It was one of his best years. Probably, certainly the best year since he led the Browns to the playoffs in 2020. And again, if he has an offensive line, he doesn't have to play hero ball. Like Baker is not a hero ball quarterback, and when he's scrambling around because when Baker Mayfield off script, he's okay, but he thinks he's Patrick Mahomes sometimes, but when he has an offensive line, he doesn't do that as much, and the play is much better. You can just see the difference from his last year in Cleveland to this, where I stand by it. If Baker Mayfield was in the Browns team last year, they could have even won a Super Bowl because they had the offensive line, they had the weapons, they had a run game, they had everything there, and and they had a functional coach, which they didn't really have in his time in Cleveland. Obviously, the last year is a bit different, but yeah, just the Browns actually now seem like a pretty good organisation. Besides the Deshaun Watson trade, everything else has gone right for them over the last couple of years. If Baker was there last year, I just wonder what could have been, because he had an offensive line, had receivers, had everything, and we saw what he did in Tampa in that situation. I just wonder what could have been. Instead, they got a worse quarterback. They got worse at quarterback, and and Baker is quite rightly ahead of Deshaun Watson in this list.
That is actually a really good point you make, because not only would the Browns first be more likable by the whole world, they'd be like they were in 2020 season when they made the playoffs. Like the Lions last year, essentially, everyone was really behind the Browns, because maybe apart from Steelers, Bengals, and and Ravens fans, but the whole league was behind the Browns back then. And I think when everyone would have been moving Baker Mayfield, and you think about as well the 3 draft picks they gave up to go and get Watson in the first place, and the money they spent on salary cap, they could have gone out and got some real good weapons. Now, I maybe could look at maybe who the Browns have got since, and maybe they could have or who the Texans have got since. I mean, they've gone out and got Stephon Diggs, with all that kind of stuff. I do wonder what will happen with Baker Mayfield, because you got Amari Cooper there, you've got Njoku, who was one of my favourite tight ends in the entire league. I think he's amazing. Nick Chubb is one of the best running backs when he's healthy. You got to think about where he was when he was there. It was not as good as it is now, and obviously you got Myles Garrett, who's been there when he was there as well. But I think you're absolutely right. Baker Mayfield had his bad years, had his good years, but you gotta think how it could have been, especially with the injuries. I mean, Dorian Thompson-Robinson playing, and it took again a crazy 3-week run from a 60-year-old Joe Flacco off the sofa to save the day. I remember actually watching. I was in Cleveland, watched Browns against Steelers. It was just a case of two teams that had everything going right for them except for quarterback. The weapons were good, the defense was good, but both teams, you could just tell they were just missing that quarterback. And for me, that was one takeaway I had massively from that game. Now you mentioned Russell Wilson there. He is my number 60. He's my number 17. But before him at 18, I don't know how else will go down my pick now. Aaron Rodgers is my number 18.
Whoa!
Jump from last year.
Wow, you will not like where I've got him if this is the case. Oh wow.
No, well, I will save my views on that for later on, because it sounds like this could be a tasty little segment. But yeah, Rodgers for me, I'll mention more later on, but I think the injury he had last year, he may be injured again at times. If it didn't look right the other day. For me, in the fact he's 40. But we'll move on, so we'll talk about that more later on. So you're 17, Sam.
My number 17 is Kyler Murray. Now, he falls a few spots from last year, but he's not really done much wrong. I think a couple of quarterbacks just really surprised us last year and have jumped quite high after some outstanding seasons. It took Kyler a while to get adjusted after he came back from basically the season out injured pretty much the whole 12 months. But yeah, coming back to play 8 games after that, he found his rhythm towards the end of the year, and most importantly as well, he looked like a better decision maker, which he looked like he had improved in that aspect from the sort of Cliff Kingsbury years. Again, it may just be that he was in a more traditional offense, something that probably actually suited him more, but something looked different about Kyler. He just looked more composed, and I'm really excited to see him with a Cardinals team now that looks just on the up. Again, a full off-season training as well, and learning the offense rather than just rehabbing like it would have been last year. I really wouldn't be surprised to see him have a decent season next year. I really like Kyler as a player. He just falls because some players were absolutely amazing last year. But no, I don't think they move on from him now. I really like Kyler, and last year he looked like he sort of thought better. He wasn't scrambling around everywhere. He was just a more composed, clinical quarterback. And obviously as well as rushing ability as well, and that really impressed me last year. So if I can get a full season of that from Kyler, he'll be in and around the top 10 for me, I think.
Yeah, I've gone to a trend last week where I kept watching old videos of way too early mock drafts. I like to see sort of who anyone got anything right, or who kind of players and whether they were even picked in the first round. And I used the TPS Total Pro Sports YouTube channel to do this, and and many others, and it was consensus out he was going to be an Arizona Cardinal, Caleb Williams. It seemed the consensus. No one was high on Kyler Murray. I mean, looking at last year, you had him in, according to my thing, 13th, but maybe not 13th, and I had him in 15th. And it's a guy that we weren't really saying he was bad. We weren't high on as if he's going to take it to the next level. The injury he had, and obviously the whole Call of Duty thing got thrown around at times, and I think you saw at times actually when he came back just how much better they looked with him. And we shouldn't forget that for most of his time in the NFL, he had Steve Wilkes, or maybe that was before he came, but then he had Cliff Kingsbury. Obviously we all know not a good NFL head coach. So I think you put him in with good coaching, and I think Jonathan Gannon has proved that to get the wins they got. Really, when everyone was saying they'd get the first overall pick, it's, for me, a great job by Gannon. I think an underrated job by John Gannon. I think
their defense, it had nobody on it, but it played really well at points last year as well. He did really well with the defense. The offense, it again had limited talent. It had, it had basically practice squad players playing on it for most of the year. And Kyler came back and did a decent job of it. So the Cardinals are very early in the rebuild, but I think Murray is something they can rebuild around rather than get rid of.
I agree, and you give him Marvin Harrison Jr. Trey McBride, I think, will improve once again. James Conner, I think, is an extremely underrated back, and then you got Matt Wilson on the defense, and I think, yes, this team won't probably make the playoffs, but I think we'll see another step made in the right direction. I think we'll see another year. In another year's time after this, I think is where we could see Murray really, really excel. Murray is on my next list. He is, for me, number 16. We're getting quite a similar trend at the moment. I think we maybe could have a similar, but the next one may shock you. My 15 is Trevor Lawrence.
Okay, no, I'm not shocked by that. He's not too much higher for me. So
okay, that's good to know. So for you, Sam, go through to me your 16 and your 15.
So my number 16 is Brock Purdy. He starts a run of QBs for me that I would be comfortable starting a playoff game, but maybe not sort of going deep and winning it on their own. Again, great distributor of the football. And also as well, one thing I love about Brock Purdy, his pocket presence, the way he moves, it's really good. Like his legs, the way he uses his legs is really underrated. But that's it. And there's nothing special. There's no strong arm. He doesn't have the legs of Jalen Hurts or Lamar Jackson. He's got some decent IQ, but he doesn't have the anticipation of Tua Tagovailoa. He's just sort of like he's an average sort of point guard style quarterback. Doesn't have anything special about him, and in the big games he has shrunk, unfortunately. Nothing wows me about him at all, but he is incredibly efficient. He does what he does very well, and that does win games in the regular season. And the only reason why he's not higher for me is because the QBs above him are either more athletic than him, or there's something that wows me, and Brock Purdy has nothing that wows me, unfortunately, so he is my number 16. My number 15 is a guy who's just got paid. It's Jared Goff, fresh off a career year. He is now one of the highest paid quarterbacks in the league, and he deserves it as well. Again, everyone from here upwards, I'd be happily having him as my quarterback. So, it's 15 might seem too hard for Goff, but he bucks the trend. seen many QBs like him anymore. His play style isn't exactly sexy, so I think he does go under the radar a lot. He's won in the playoffs too. Obviously, he's won in the playoffs with the Rams and the Lions. The Lions beat they beat the Rams, and and won again against the Bucks as well last year. They have to change it up from what they normally do against the Rams as well in that game. Goff showed a different side to his game and played a lot better. Sort of had one of his best games of the season in the playoffs as well. So Goff can win the playoffs, but I don't. Again, it's like with Purdy. I don't think he's a story. There's nothing that wows me, and I feel harsh because he's been leapfrogged by a few players that have sort of shot themselves into stardom this year. But I really like Jared Goff. Again, he's a bit of a statue, which can hurt him at times, but that's why, and that's again another reason why he's not higher for me. But I really like him and he deserves his money, and he was excellent last year.
Oh boy. I've got them both in my top 10. Purdy and Goff, yeah. I won't say what they are yet, but I think wow, what a goal there. Sorry, I just see a goal. What a goal for Czech Republic. For me, Goff and Purdy, both for me, and answer critic. I think Goff, there's a reason
they have nothing special there. That's what I'm saying. I like them, I really like them, but there's nothing that pops out like compared to when you watch Patrick Mahomes or something like that. They have no superpower.
No, granted, but I will say that particularly Purdy, I get obviously there's a reason why they're behind at the start, but you look at the games against Packers and the Lions in the NFC divisional round and championship. Purdy had some really important game-winning drives when it mattered. Under centre, he got the job done, and I think there's other quarterbacks we're going to mention later on. You probably know who one of them I'm going to mention is, but you put them in a big spot again and again and again, they do not perform. Whether that's Tua, whether that's Cousins, whether that's Dak, they can have all these stats in the world and all that talent in the world, but I've never seen any of them in a big moment, in the big spot, come out and get it done. Maybe except Dak once, maybe in his career, but I've never seen any of his three quarterbacks do that. Whereas Purdy, I saw him in just 2 games alone. Keith maybe argued the year before that in the divisional round or the wildcard round, but I saw him in 2 big games when the chips were down, him drive the team down and driving the victory. Particularly Purdy for me really showed for me that he is. We all know Brady. I think whilst he did lead the league in passing multiple times, he didn't have the arm of Brett Favre. He didn't have the arm of maybe Peyton Manning at times, but Tom Brady knew how to get done. And I think whilst in the regular season, he'd probably be more impressed by the likes of, Cousins or most quarterbacks in this list. But, there's only a few I'd have more on a big game than Purdy, because he showed to me in just 2 games, and also someone else the same thing later on, that they can do it. They showed me, Purdy showed me in the big moments, he can drive his team towards victory. So for me, that is my reason alone, because it's all good having regular season stats, but if you can't do it in the playoffs, then what's the point? So, yeah, Purdy I'm a lot higher on. But I also see where you're coming from. I do see, because, it is down to, if you've got a O-line led by Trent Williams, who for me is the best left tackle I've ever seen. You've got George Kittle, one of the best tight ends in the league. Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, Christian McCaffrey, who's head and shoulders the best running back in the league at the moment. And obviously a brilliant coaching job by Kyle Shanahan. You're going to perform well, but I didn't see other quarterbacks do it with Kyle Shanahan like he has. So for me,
I'd argue that in the 2 games this year, it was more the Lions collapse. if we're being totally honest, the Lions absolutely collapsed in that game, dropping that big lead more than anything. Like, yeah, the Lions did well to come back, but I can see what you mean. But I don't think Purdy really added anything. And if you look at his numbers from the playoffs this year compared to the regular season, it's night and day. The regular season, he was miles better. I can see where you're coming from, but I'd argue the Lions game and then the Packers game. Yeah, I'll give it to him. He did quite well in that game, but that was just the most sloppy game I've seen of football, and someone had to win it. But yeah, no, I can see what you mean. I think nothing wows me, but I'd argue that any quarterback in that situation could win the Super Bowl. So that's my only caveat. But yeah, he's great at what he does. But I think there are 15 other guys that I'd rather have to do it. If I'm being honest.
Actually, well, on Purdy, I want a little update for the audience because I mentioned about a few times now a while ago that my barber looks like Brock Purdy, just with more piercings and more tattoos. But he's left now, so I no longer have to be. I no
No.
longer get to have Brock Purdy as my barber. It's a bit of a shame, but yeah, I used to always. I wish I obviously I could have probably should have mentioned to him, but I don't think he ever expressed any interest in the NFL, so I think it'd be completely pointless. But yeah, it was literally like looking at. If you imagine Brock Purdy with glasses, piercings, or not as much piercings, but certainly the tattoos all over his face and his neck and his arms, then yeah, you certainly would. Maybe draw some comparisons between the two. Now, where were we? So we are on
14.
to 14, which is a guy that he has shot up my list massively. Jordan Love. I've got 14. Jordan Love for me, again, like Purdy, like I mentioned then, in a game where I actually had them beat the Cowboys, but not many had them beat the Cowboys. And Love just completely just showed Dallas a new one. And to be honest, he did going up against Dak Prescott, he showed Dak how to get done in the playoffs because Dak Prescott has won 2 playoff games in his career. Granted, one was, against the Seahawks, fair enough to him, but the Bucs one was against the aging Tom Brady. His last game actually as a pro. But, Prescott has time and time again, albeit it's some bad coaching, but he always seems to struggle in the big moments. Whereas Love, given his first playoff game, did exceptionally well. And I think for me, he showed me signs down the stretch. I think first half of the season last year, I was thinking to myself, I think a lot of fans, I remember that game against the Lions on it was either Thursday or Monday night. I remember being on at 1 a.m. and not being a weekend. And I remember thinking then, maybe he's not the guy. Maybe the Packers have finally not lucked out on a quarterback in a draft. But that second half of the season, how he performed and how he linked up with the likes of Jaron Reed and Wicks and Romeo Dobbs and not as much Watson, but with a young, really, there's not an elite receiver in Green Bay. There's just loads of really good receivers, and he just, for me, looked so good down the stretch. And then obviously that playoff game against the Cowboys, and obviously it wasn't meant to be in the next round, but for me, I saw so much from Jordan Love that I can be positive about if I was a Packers fan. Comfortable in the pocket, moved around with ease, showed his arm talent. So for me, I don't know whether he'll be the elite, but I think he may well be that level just below, like the very, very good. I don't think he's going to be a Kirk Cousins. I think he'll be a lot better than Kirk Cousins in terms of big game credentials. But I don't think he'll be a Mahomes or Josh Allen. I think he'll be top 10 throughout his career, but never maybe top 5. But I could be proved wrong either way. But I loved what I saw from Jordan Love. Really liked what I saw, and I think that for me, the Packers. That's why for me personally, we're going a bit early into predictions. I think the Packers will be at least in the divisional round and could even, if seeding goes their way, sneak into the conference game. I really do think they're that good of a young team. I think Jordan Love will be the heartbeat and centre of that team. I think next year, if the way he's going, the trajectory he's going, I see him being top 10 very, very easily.
I agree. My number 14 is a quarterback that proved a lot of doubters wrong last year. He stayed healthy for the first time in a season. He led the league, and after leading the league in passer rating in 2022, he led it in passing yards this year, and earned his first Pro Bowl nomination too. But because of the way that the year ended for Tua Tagovailoa, he is only my number 14. No one until really deep in the top 10 has a superpower like Tua does. Yeah, he's got something that's truly unique. His accuracy, his anticipation is so good. It's so smooth. Just his eyes, But when it really matters, him and Mike McDaniel have crumbled the last couple of years. When everything's been there, they've just not gelled and succeeded when it's really needed. When really needed. Really, I think he's a very, very good quarterback. But until they can seem to get it right in December and January, I can't put Tua any higher. They've been quite unlucky the way things have panned out, whether it's injuries or anything. But yeah, until that changes, I can't do it. I think he has it. I think he is absolutely capable of putting a team on his back. I've seen him do it in the regular season, especially earlier in his career. I've seen him do it in college, but it's what happens late in the year. I have to mark him down, but I really like watching Tua play. I think again he is something very special, which a lot of the guys around him here don't. That and right now he's sort of in this category with the likes of Purdy and Goff and my next guy. I think he can be above that. I've seen it. It just has never clicked. I think this year it does click, but until it happens, I can't rank him any higher.
I think this year's his chance because I think he is going to a season where the Bills have just lost their two best receivers, and I know they've got Kincaid now and Khalil Shakir. It could be very underrated and very special, but I think that receiving core is not the same, and they've lost guys on defense as well. Jordan Poyer's come to us. Von Miller's another year older. So I think that this is his time and our time to win the division. Whether he will, I don't know. But again, I'm not going to mention him more because I mention it every week. I think to my thoughts on him. I don't think he's a guy. But for me, I've still got him 14 on my list, and it feels weird that I've put him down 13 on my list, I should say. Sorry.
Yeah, see, you've got him higher than me, and I'm a big fan of Tua. so I don't. You sort of give him a bit more credit at least. Like,
yeah, I mean, I can't deny that he had most passing yards, but I'm also fully aware that he did put up a lot of numbers against bad teams. Look at the Chargers had the 5th overall pick for a reason. You think that the Commanders were bad, 2nd overall pick for a reason. Patriots 3rd overall pick. You think about the Broncos. Obviously, they had a higher pick, but obviously we put 70 points on them, and that was an absolute feat result. But you think about all the game when it really matters, because I think you think about there's certain footballers we see in Premier League where they'll do so well when it's sunny, but as soon as it gets cold and wet, the whole "can he do it on a wet night in Stoke" thing, they don't do as well. I think we see the same thing sadly with the Dolphins and Tua. They do. You look at Dolphins in October, September. I mean, this year probably both years last careers under McDaniel was lasted until early December, where the team looks unbelievable, and you get your hopes up. You think this team could actually win a playoff game, could actually make the Super Bowl. But also, then both years we've seen it, get down to the final stretch. Both years we should be back-to-back AFC's champions. The times we crumbled the last couple of years, when we've been 4 games clear last year, 3 or 2 games clear the year before that, and that obviously that Titans game will haunt me for as long as I can think of.
I'd argue though the circumstances no other team has faced. Like when you lose your entire defense as the season goes, when Tyreek and Waddle are both banged up as well, and then the year before when you have 3 concussions, I'd argue that those two they've been incredibly unlucky in the way it's been. Again, they should have won a Titans game, and they after that it was just hard work from there because they had the big games. They won the game against Dallas. And then, the Ravens and Bills game. By that point, the defense was gone. So Bradley Chubb at that point, gone. Phillips gone. And they just weren't the same team anymore. The offensive line was banged up at that point as well. I'd argue that they've been incredibly unlucky, and I think you can only be so unlucky. I'd be shocked if they're this unlucky again next year after 2 straight years of really. I mean, yes, they've crumbled, but there have been reasons why they've crumbled the last 2 years.
Yeah, I mean, I get that, but at the same time, I've seen him struggle against the Chiefs in Germany with Phillips and Chubb there and Waddle and Hill. I've seen him struggle, against the Jets on that Black Friday game where he got bailed out by Holland, that Holland pick 6 from the Hail Mary, threw an interception needlessly in that game. I've seen him with everyone healthy as well at times throw some silly passes away, and but I do get what you mean because we have got to be the most injured team the last couple of years, and it seems crazy that we go into 1 year playoff game, we've got Skylar Thompson playing quarterback. Albeit we almost won that game, and then a year later we have all these injuries, and the O-line towards the end was just having no names there, guys who were just almost 2nd or 3rd choice at the start of the year in each position. But at the same time, he's still the ones making the bad throws and making some stupid decisions. We weren't even close against the Chiefs in the wild card round. We weren't even close. That was my issue with it. In fact, how can 1 year we were 3 points loss to with the guy in the centre who's now our third choice quarterback, to then go a year later to a team that probably was the same level, the same sort of record in the Chiefs and the Bills sort of next year, and we look nowhere near competing. We look nowhere near, and I want to say the touchdown came from a defense, but I could be wrong on that, or maybe that was a Bills game. But either way, yeah, I think for me it goes down to what you're saying. Until we see him doing a big moment, then that will be. I mean, this year I think I love. We'll talk about it more in our Dolphins season preview, but I think we're getting in real leaders this year. You know, you think of Odell Beckham having a third guy to throw to. I think on defense, Jordan Poyle being a lot of leadership, and I think as well, Calais Campbell, who's come in literally today officially, he will bring so much off the field, probably more than on the field, if I'm honest. But I think what we've brought in this year is a lot of leaders for the dressing room, and I think that will only help things. I think Tua could easily surprise me and could easily be top 10 for me next year. But right now, for all the reasons you're saying, I can't have him any higher. And I think we talk about beating the Cowboys. They were basically the NFC Dolphins last year. I think that's why I've got Dak number 12 for me. For me, Dak and Tua are the same quarterback for me. They are the exact same quarterback, have all the stats in the world, they have weapons, but neither of them can get done when it matters. So for me, Dak Prescott is number 12.